evening, everyone. Hello and welcome to another open door show. Not many now before Christmas. I guess you're all looking forward to Christmas in your bubbles of 3 or whatever it is you're allowed to do. Anyway, so welcome here to the Open Door Show. My name is Ritchie Clapson, and as always, I'm here with the other half of propertyCEO, Mr. Ian Child.
Good evening, everybody. It must be warmer where I am than when you are, Rich.
I just got a jumper on. Yeah, I just thought I'd put a different look to it this evening. Got to mix it up a little bit. Anyway, look, if it's your first time here, and I know probably a few of you are looking at a few of the names. I don't know everyone on the list. I know a few of you, but not all of you. If it's your first time, what have you let yourself in for? Well, our aim is to give you 45 minutes of non-stop positivity all around the theme of business and property development. Isn't that right, Ian?
Certainly is. Basically, our job is to run a company called propertyCEO, which trains people how to become successful small-scale property developers. Lots of really amazing opportunities out there right now, particularly for new developers, people getting into development. So we want to help people find out all about those opportunities and to see if development might be a good fit for them.
That's right. Of course, global pandemic, recession. What was the Chancellor talking about last night on the news? How many people are going to be unemployed? How difficult it's going to be next year? And it will be. But here's the thing, okay? Recessions always create opportunities, but only for those that seek them out at the start rather than waiting around for everything to settle down. So as always, we'll be serving up probably some predictions, some guests, some training, but above all, we're going to have a bit of fun. But of course, it is a question and answer show. That's what it's about. You don't ask us any questions and we've got a job to answer them, which makes it a little bit tricky. Makes it a little bit boring, to be fair, although I suppose we have a good time. We always enjoy it. So please put some questions in the chat box and we will answer them as we go through. And tonight's show is an Ask Us Anything show, which is as your request last week. You asked us to do another Ask You Anything because we didn't get through all the questions. So hopefully you're going to pop some more in because I didn't make a note of them all. But I hope, questions are popping in already. So that's good. I've got a couple of questions that are sent in the week and you're always welcome to do that. So I'm going to kick off with one of those in a minute. But please put your questions in there. Give us a wave. Let us know you can hear and see us. Please just give us a quick hands up. Yes. Thank you very much. So good evening to you all. So good evening, Gabriella. Good evening, Gabriella and Mike and Adair and Jackie and Giovanni's on again. Peter, Will's on, Josh is on, Sumi's on, Simon's on, Teresa's on. Teresa, hello. Welcome on board, Teresa. She's one of our... Teresa is our officially, Teresa, you are our newest mentee. So welcome aboard. That's a little prize for you on that one. I'm not sure what the prize is, but you'll get that in the post. Well, possibly not. Anyway, Raj is on, Andrew's on. Who else is on? Dan's on this evening as well. Good evening, Dan, Paul, etc., etc. Quite a few of you. And I haven't mentioned all the names. I do apologise. And Dev says good evening both. And Raj says hello, A-team. You look well. Well, you look well as well, everyone. You all look really, really well. So, are we ready to go with some questions?
I think we are. Are you kicking off? You say you've got one. Have you got a favourite that you found?
Well, I've got one that's coming in the week. Sumi's put one in the week, and I know he's on. So let's do Sumi's first because that would be unfair not to, wouldn't it? Anyway, I don't know what's fair or what not fair. So let's go for his question here. What is the best project? What is the best project to start off with for a first-time development?
Good question.
He says, is it a house conversion into flats or is it an industrial building developed into flats? Thanks. I like it when you put thanks on the end. It always makes it a lot easier for us to read out. So, well, it's probably not an industrial building, although you might have read a book about industrial conversions. Okay, it's not going to be an industrial conversion at the moment because the permitted developments right for industrial buildings run out a few months ago. So at the end of September, it's run out. So you can't do permitted development rights conversion straight into industrial. So we've knocked that one off the list, Sumi. Okay. What's the next thing? Is it a house conversion into flats? No, it's not a house conversion into flats because you need planning to convert a house into flats. So we've knocked that one off. And in fact, that's the only two you had on your list. So now we're in trouble. Okay. So let me give you a couple of suggestions for your list, Sumi. Pen and paper, please, at the ready, and maybe for anyone else. Put your pen and paper together now, and let's have a few suggestions. The best, easiest, simplest opportunities to start off with right now in the property development world are, number one, these aren't necessarily in the right order. Number one, take an existing office building because there's going to be plenty of stock coming to the market because companies are closing down, companies are changing the way they work. So there's going to be offices coming to the market. And for most of you out there, you'll know, and a lot of you that don't, you will now, because I'm telling you, there are permitted development rights been around, well established for quite a number of years to convert offices into residential. Number one, great opportunity, stock coming to the market, and a lot of people are going, yeah, but hang on, it's quite expensive. Well, it is, but the prices will be coming down. Watch this space, mark my word, prices will be coming down. Okay, more stock to the market, more motivated sellers because they need the cash in the bank because there's all sorts of problems going on out there for businesses. Better deals for us to pick up as developers. Office to resi. Second one is the high street, and you're no surprise there. You're probably all shouting high street out. Those that know us know we talk about the high street. Taking, Sumi, a retail building, taking an existing retail shop. Hopefully it's got some upper space. If not, it's going to be a little bit more problematic, but convert that into residential on the upper floors. Above shops, under permitted development rights, you can convert that into residential. 2 flats per shop, okay? If you've only got 1 shop, split that shop into 2, put 4 flats above. If you want 6 flats, take the shop, convert it into 3, and put 6 flats above. There are ways in certain areas you can convert the ground floor of a shop as well. But those 2 key areas are some great opportunities to work in. There are areas where not only is there lots of stock in both areas because there's stuff coming to the market because companies are closing down, change the way they work, etc., but equally they're well-trodden paths that people before you have done or are doing successfully out there right now. So it's a great route to go. There are other things that you can go and do. Sure, you could go and buy a house, and on the back of that house, you could put some extensions, 2-story, single stories, loft conversions, all sorts of things, again, you can do under permitted development rights. You can go and do other things. You can go and put extra floors on buildings. You can build in airspace. Sue me, for your first job, no. Don't go and do that for your first job. There are lots of complications with that. There are technical complications in terms of the buildability. All can be overcome, but why? Why do you need to do that for your first job? You know, it's a bit like, let's go and get some experience on running. Well, we don't go straight out and run a marathon, do we? We might do a bit of a fun run first of all, and then build ourselves up. So here, to an extent, you're in development. Okay, it's great, get into development, but start with something that's got the path of least resistance, you know, the simplest way forward. So there we go. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a good start. If you're happy with that answer, let me know in the chat box. If you're not, equally let me know and I'll have a little sulk.
Fantastic. There's such a thing as a fun run, is there?
There was. I'll tell you what, though, I did a fun run. Going back some years, I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s, and I worked in an office in Winchester, in a design office, probably late 20s, actually, thinking about it. Yeah, it must have been. I think I was married. And I signed up in the office. We all had a bit of a chat. So again.
It was the late 20s, or you were in the late 20s.
Hey, you're funny, aren't you? Yeah, well, you got these written down, these jokes? No. No, they're just off the cuff. Maybe you ought to write some down. So anyway, what I was going to say is we did this run. We all signed up for this what I thought was a marathon, and it was a fun run. I'll tell you what, when I got to the end of that was no fun. I thought I was going to die. I honestly thought I was going to die. There was no fun in that at all. Sumi says, "Thank you, Richie. Very useful answer. Pleasure."
Wow.
Right.
Start as you mean to go on. Interesting when you were mentioning about the opportunity with offices. I read today that new office builds in London over the last 6 months are down 50%. So basically this whole change where people, I think the biggest driver there is probably people now looking to work from home. A lot of the banks and so on have said that they don't want these massive call centers anymore. They're going to get people working more regionally and working from home, making better use of working from home. So it seems that's just manifested itself in the amount of new build that's going up in London. So down 50% over the last 6 months, massive change. So looks set to continue. Right, I've got a question here somewhere. So this is from Himat. Good evening, Himat. Do you think it is important to have existing business experience to become a property developer? What is a good question? So I think the answer to that question is it certainly helps. I mean, property at the end of the day is a business, so we've got to treat it like a business. And actually, whichever business strategy you do, I think any commercial enterprise, people can come a cropper really easy when they don't treat it like a business, when they treat it like a bit of a hobby, or I'll make a few bob. or it's a bit of a longer term investment. But if you treat it like a business, then you're always going to be on the front foot. I think when we talk about development, we say that you need 4 key skills. So you need management skills, you need organizational skills, you need decision-making skills, and perhaps above all, you need people skills. And of course, those all come together quite nicely as skills that a business owner, a business person would have. So I think when it comes to business experience, if you've run your own business, you definitely will have used all 4 of those things to good effect, I'm sure. And they then translate quite neatly into the role of the property developer. Bear in mind that with a property development, so much of it is leverage. So we don't have to design anything, we don't have to lay any bricks. We're kind of just bringing a team together that does that stuff. So I think that's probably a given. Are there other areas that you could have gained that experience? Yeah, absolutely. So many developers, bearing in mind that you don't necessarily have to do development full time. People get into development and do it part time because it is so highly leveraged. And of course, I think they could come from any other walks of life. They could be certainly working in a professional capacity in the construction industry or in the development trade, or of course they could be in a management position, in having a career, again just using those skills. So yeah, I think as long as you've got those skills, you're going to be in a pretty good place. What you then need to bolt on is the knowledge that's specific to property development, but existing business experience will certainly stand you in good stead. Hope that helps him out.
Good. Raj has got a question in here. I'm just trying to work the question out, Raj, but I think I understand it. He says, scenario for you.
Oh.
This is a bit of a story. I feel like a bit of story time coming on.
Good job, you jumper on then.
I know we need to pull the mic in and do this slightly different. Right. Scenario for you. There are 3 grown-up siblings living at home, property-free and mortgage-free. And then I'm not going to work out the rest of this. It said, there would be first-time buyers and are on good salaries. That's good, isn't it? Okay. Each has their own deposits. And here's the question. How could they make best use of their situation to make money in property? Okay, so we've got 3 siblings, all got a few quid each. How can they make money in property? That's the question that Raj has asked. And perhaps what's the best route? Well, the first thing I'd say is what you want to do is go back and listen to Open Door show number 1. It was about 6 months ago, and we did a thing called Esmeralda and the Landlord, and we talked about a very similar thing. So Raj, I think you might have been watching that or reading the book, one of our books, so who knows. But anyway, if you've got some money, and let's just say you've got £250,000, okay, and we've got £250, there are 3 siblings in this case, so we've got 3 opportunities. What could you go and do? Well, you could go and buy cash outright 1 buy-to-let somewhere in the country, and you could rent it out, and you could make £500 or £600 a month. You'd be happy with that. You could leverage that cash, and maybe you could go and buy 3 or 4 buy-to-lets, okay? And then you can rent them out, and you can make a few quid out of each, a bit more because you've leveraged, but you've got a mortgage on each, so that's going to take a bit of money. But of course, your money's all gone now, so you've got to wait and build up a deposit before you can go again, maybe another 4 or 5 years. You could actually go and put it into an HMO, 1 or 2, and of course, you've got the same process. You can either buy 1, maybe you've got enough to do it up, you're going to have to borrow it, you get more return out of it. And of course, you could also go down the road of leveraging and getting more borrowings and get a bit out of that. But of course, you then have to save up once your 250,000's gone. I'm going to package those all up as the first sibling. They can go and do that. The second sibling, if they're absolutely crazy, completely off their rocker, they can go and get into service apartment and run a hotel with lots of tenants coming in and out every night and then iron the sheets and change the beds. If you're completely mad, you want to get into service apartments. Personal opinion, obviously a lot of people thoroughly enjoy it and do it successfully, although I do think you're probably slightly mad because there's a lot easier ways to make money. If you absolutely enjoy it, then that's good on you. It's a bit like bungee jumping. I can't think of anything worse. Anyway, aside from that, the third sibling could actually take their £250,000 and put that into 1, if not 2, commercial opportunities in development, as I was talking about with Sumi earlier. Maybe an office, maybe a retail unit, relatively small scale development. That's what we have a bit of a name for here when we teach people. Go and do some small scale developments. You could probably, with that money, do 2 schemes. See, Ian's book says Sumi, absolutely right. So you could actually go and do 2 schemes, okay? And out of each of those schemes, probably, if I balance those numbers up, Raj, you could probably make 150,000 out of each. So actually, you're going to get your money back, your £250,000, and another £300,000 within 2 years. And then you can go again. Doesn't take a lot to work out which sibling's going to be better off in time. In fact, that sibling could come out and every 2 years, they could go and buy 3 or 4 buy-to-lets. They're going to be a lot further down the road than sibling number 1 or maybe sibling number 2, who's completely stressed because they're actually running a hotel. They're probably actually turned into an alcoholic by then. So there we go, Raj. There's an answer to your question. Hopefully that answers the question. But definitely go back and listen to Open Door number 1, or as Sumi says in our book, we talk about the Esmeralda story and this principle of how landlords can become developers and actually accelerate their buy-to-let journey. Nothing wrong with buy-to-lets, nothing really wrong with HMOs and that. There's a lot wrong with service departments in lots of ways, in personal opinion. But that aside, if you want to run that, that's great. But you can really accelerate any of those other strategies if you get into development. So there you go. Hopefully that's useful.
Fantastic. And none of these characters had any names. I thought it was going to be a bit of a story, but there we go.
It was, but I thought I might be here all night telling a story, and I thought I did a little bit of drama for pulling the mic in, but that's the best I thought I could run with.
No, fair enough. But it's interesting though, yeah, that combination of being a landlord and being a developer, a lot of people think you have to do one or the other. If you do both, that's where the magic happens. We've got a question here from Harjinder. Could I get 100% funding for my deals? And if so, what would the criteria be to get it? Okay, so getting 100% funding, let's just break down where the money comes from. You've got the asset finance, which is what you use to actually buy for example, a commercial building that you're going to convert. And then you've got the development finance. Typically, a commercial lender will lend you 70% of the asset finance and 100% of the development finance, leaving you 30% of the asset finance to find yourself. And of course, you can get private investors who you can borrow money from to plug that 30% gap. So in theory, you could do it at 100%. However, a lot of developers these days would like the developer to have some skin in the game. So you tend to find that many developers are looking for a proportion of that 30% to come from the developer themselves rather than their team of private investors. I think that in terms of getting 100% funding, the most important part in all of this is probably the deal. If you've got a really stunning deal where the numbers look fantastic, the opportunity is great, it's secure, it's looking really, really strong, then to be honest, people are going to be really interested in lending you money. Yes, they are going to be kicking all the relevant tires and stress testing everything. But at the end of the day, that really does make a big difference if the deal stacks up. Also, they look at your team. How experienced is your team? Have they worked on that type of project before? Do you have other advisors around you? So we're not just reliant on you if this is your first time, just looking at the broader team that's going to be making this project happen. There are also some other lenders out there that are kind of joint venture funders, so businesses that are able to lend 100% of the finance for the whole thing. But they typically will take a profit share. So it's effectively a joint venture. They might put the money in for both parts, but they might take half your profit. The thing that I'd say there is that what we're trying to do as a developer, if you're in that situation where you need 100% finance, at the outset, what you're trying to do is to build up a pot. So you'll do your first project, you will get a massive amount of experience, your team will be built, the whole thing, your business and your brand will take one giant leap forward. If you have to share some of that profit because you've partnered with a joint venture funding company, then that is effectively the price of entry. But what it will do is then give you a pot. So for your second one, perhaps you now have a deposit that you can put in. So in my view, always treat your first project as a learning curve, as part of your learning. It's where everything comes together. And then you can really start flying with the second one once you've got all of those things in place. You've got that experience, and in this case, we should have a pot of money to be able to go again with. Hope that helps.
There you go, Harjinder. Hopefully that's good. People that's just joining us, I see a few of you just come on. Christopher's just come on. Peter's just come on. Jackie's just come on. Guys, if you are new to us, all these shows are recorded. Early next week, if not before. They're all recorded and they're put up onto YouTube. and you can go back and listen to the replay. So if you missed some earlier questions and some earlier content, you can go back and listen to it. We answered Raj's question earlier with a bit of a story, and he says, love it, and love you, Ritchie. Thanks. I noticed no one says they love you, Ian, but anyway, we'll run with that.
Hold on. So to be fair, Sumi did mention, he said, see Ian's book. So there we go.
Yeah, but I didn't notice that Sumi said that they love Ian. No, doesn't love Ian. And the fact no one says tonight they love Ian, but I do have someone saying they love me, and I can totally accept that. Letitia, she's put a question in. And what I like about Letitia, she's actually put two questions in. Well, she put two things in the chat box. First of all, it's a question, and then she's followed up with thanks, so she knows it's going to get asked. Letitia's question, Ola, she says, how easy is it to get / negotiate brownfield owned by the council? I believe normally they have to go to tender. It's a no-go, or is it a no-go? Question mark. Any positive story to share? The sites I found are not advertised or with agent. Well, keep them to yourself then, Letitia. Don't tell this lot on here this evening. Our little group of CEOs, they'll be all over it. Raj says, sorry, Ian, love you too, sir. Raj, no one likes a creep. Okay, so Letitia's question. Normally, Letitia, they often do have to go out to tender. They've got to show value, okay? All councils are accountable. And so in theory, they have to show that they've attained best value. Sometimes that's why they put it into an auction. Sometimes that's why they will go out to a formal tender process and invite bids. And sometimes that's why they end up, putting it on the market for a period of time. They won't necessarily take the first bid. They'll wait and see, for a period of time it will be open and best bids will be invited in. So more often than not, that's the case. Having said that, okay, not all councils will work exactly in that way. And of course, there are rumours certainly floating around in some instances in this country that some councillors will be persuaded to negotiate with someone. Now, in a way, that's not a bad thing. I think in certain circumstances, the best result for the council is to negotiate with a developer who's going to do a sensible deal and not mess them around. Now, what councils are always looking for is best value for the community. So if someone goes and asks those councils why they sold that building to Letitia, they've got to answer why. Well, you might be able to be in a position to negotiate and give back something, okay? For those who don't know what a 106 agreement is, it's where you're actually, it's basically a tax. You're going to give something back to the community. So are you going to put some money into the local scout hut? We had a question on scout huts this morning, funny, with some students on questions. But are you going to put some money into that, or the local community hall, or a statue, or something? So are you prepared to give something back on part of this deal for this land? Are you in your development proposals, and this is where you might be getting to negotiate, you're going to take this land, and out of the development, you're going to section off a bit of the building. You're going to build it, you're going to build this whole building out, and you're actually going to hand that over to the council as a community centre. There's going to be something you're going to give back. So a lot of developers would do things like that as part of their negotiation, and avoiding that whole tender process with the council. So it's not impossible. All comes down to relationships. It comes down to credibility. We teach people here in terms of being a developer how to be credible as a developer, how to go out and stand in front of someone like a councillor and them to know straight away that you are a credible developer, and they then want to deal with you and work with you. There's an art to that, and there's a secret to, well, not a secret when you know how, but there's a secret to getting that right, and you have to get that right, and then you do have a chance of getting in and doing it. But be aware they may have to provide evidence to show that. Letitia, hopefully that answers that question for you to some degree.
Fantastic. Got one here from Paul. So Paul asks, says, my credit history isn't whiter than white. Will lenders need to see the warts and all picture? And if so, will they still lend? Good question. Quite a common question, actually. We've had quite a few questions in on finance this evening. So I think the answer there, the starting point is to be honest. So if we think about where we're getting the money from, it's the commercial lenders typically that I guess you're probably thinking of here. and that's where the lion's share of the finance is likely to come from, so both for the asset and also for the development. Generally, when we interact with commercial lenders, we do it through a broker, and the broker really is your friend. So once you've got a relationship with the broker, and I'd recommend that you have a relationship with more than one, because they don't all tap into exactly the same lenders in exactly the same part of the market. You will need to convince them that you're a good bet, and that's where you have that credibility and you've kind of got that brand around you when you have those conversations. And obviously you need to be able to present the deal that you're looking at in the best light and do that professionally. But then it's their job effectively to go out and then seek who's likely to invest. Now, what tends to happen is that they will, rather than just go to everyone in the market, they are going to be looking at some specific lenders who they think are going to be a good fit. What makes them a good fit? Well, certainly it could be the type of project, it could be the area, it could be the scale of the project, the size of it. But equally, it could be you and your credit history. Some developers may not want to lend you money. Some commercial lenders. Others may be very interested, particularly if it's a good deal. There are lots of things that they can do to de-risk some of those things for them in terms of the way in which the deals are structured. There are lots of facets to commercial lending in terms of the fees, the rates, and the nuances. But what I would say, one big word of caution and one word of advice is really don't blag it and be transparent, be honest. What happens in this day and age, the finance is pretty transparent these days with all the rules and regulations around it in terms of anti-money laundering and so on. And so when it comes to lending money, the commercial lenders have a pretty good see-through and a right of access to all of the information in terms of where money's come from and the credit histories and so on, and the history generally. The financial history of the people involved. If you try and brush that under the carpet, then it may be that it doesn't get picked up at the first stage, and then your broker walks into a meeting with the lender, and then it all comes out, and then they look foolish. They're not going to be best pleased with you, and the lender won't lend you money. So far better to have that conversation, warts and all, with the broker at the start, as you say in the question, and then they at least have a fighting chance of putting something together that will help you get across that. If it turns out that it is insurmountable, or it's finding really challenging to be able to get finance, then of course one of the things you could do is potentially team up with somebody who does have a better financial sort of situation, and that in terms of their credibility from a financial perspective is maybe better than yours. Always, as we always counsel against joint ventures, because if people do them, we want them to really kick the tires very, very hard. But certainly when you've got somebody else in there who perhaps has that financial credibility, that is another way in which you can do it. But be honest with the broker. You may be surprised as to what they might be able to find for you.
Good. Stephen's question. Good evening, Stephen. Stephen says, what does Stephen say? He says, what's the difference between a quantity surveyor and a cost consultant? I assume they are the same, pretty much, just different terminology. Okay, I get this quite a bit. A lot of people will say, yeah, oh, I've got a cost consultant, but you mentioned a quantity surveyor. They are the same thing. If you think about it, a surveyor that measures quantities and a consultant that measures costs. Well, the quantities on buildings are generally around cost. That's what it's about. So they are pretty much one of the same. For those that don't know, why do you need a cost consultant or a quantity surveyor on your project? Because you need to estimate how much the project is going to be. These are consultants that will work for you as the developer. Okay, this is not the cost consultant, the surveyor that works for the contractor, because there will be one internally within the construction company. They'll have someone that measures all their numbers. This is someone that's going to work with you at the early stage of the project to pull together the estimated construction costs. Because when you're looking at a project out there and you're trying to decide what you do and what it is you're going to try and put together and how you're going to develop it, you're going to come up with a concept, a scheme. You're going to have an architect, you're going to have an engineer working, you're a structural engineer, perhaps a mechanical electrical engineer maybe. And between them, they're going to come up with a scheme, a design. Let's knock that wall down. Let's put some new windows in. Let's put these kitchens in, these bathrooms, and so on and so forth. you need to quantify the measurement of all of that and the cost of all that. So your quantity surveyor will help pull that together. They'll have a look through, they'll see what it's about, and they'll make an estimate, and they'll come back to you and say, look, Mr. CEO, because that's what you obviously are, we reckon this build cost is going to be in the order of £300,000. And it's going to have a complete breakdown, okay? Sometimes more or less, sometimes they just put it into packages, into headings. You can have what's called a bill of quantities, and that is a complete schedule of every single nut, screw, bolt, door, hinge, everything on the whole project. In this industry, we don't do a huge amount of that these days, and the sort of size projects you guys are working on out there, or potentially working on if you're new to development, or potentially thinking of working on if you're completely new to property, then you're not going to likely to need a bill of quantities, but you will need a cost consultant. And then they'll put this number together, and then what you do as a process, you're going to monitor the actual build costs against the actual predicted costs, the tender costs that you get in from the contractors. You're going to check against it, and you're going to follow that process all the way through. So it's all about control of the money. Anyone out there ever watch Grand Designs? Give us a hands up if you ever watch Grand Designs on the telly. Give us a quick wave. Yes, quite a lot of you. Let me ask you a next question, and I'm going to put the hands down. Hands down. Stop pressing. Hands down. Let me ask you this question. Who's ever seen on Grand Designs the projects go over budget and over time? Hands up. They always do, don't they? Thank you, guys. They always do. Every time, all the hands shot up then. Well, a few didn't, so maybe a few of you have seen an odd project that's come within budget, but they don't. They go over budget and over time. They don't control their projects. Now, that's great for TV. It makes good watching, but it's not great when you're in the driving seat. It's one of the biggest fears that a lot of potential people coming into development are thinking of. Maybe some of you this evening are thinking about coming into development. And I mean, some people are thinking about coming into it late. Roma's just joined. Roma, you just joined. It's 1933. Not the date, the time. Come on, you've only got a few minutes left of the show. What are you doing this evening? Anyway, coming back to this cost thing, you need to control this. This project is about you and your money. It's not the TV's money. It's not Kevin McLeod, whatever his name is, fluffing around saying, oh, it's great for TV, isn't it? So you need to control it. So cost consultant is so important for you. Stephen, hopefully that long ramble answered your question, including say hello to Roma as the evening progressed, about quantity surveyors and cost consultants.
Fantastic. It was a long ramble, wasn't it? Very enjoyable. I've got one here.
Hi, Ranjinder.
Hello. Got one here from Peter, who said, I did have it here a second ago, who says, I am nervous. Well, yeah, aren't we all? Where's the rest of it? It's here somewhere. About approaching commercial agents. Any tips for newbies? Yeah, so I think a lot of people do find commercial agents in particular a bit of a strange beast, and can be a little bit of anxiety there. I think for a lot of people, particularly obviously first-time developers, it's perhaps the first time they're really kind of stressing their elevator pitch in anger. They're getting out there, they're kind of putting themselves up, opening themselves up for inspection in terms of their business, their credentials, and having that one-to-one conversation. So it can be a little bit daunting. So everybody, when they start out, is in exactly the same boat. So please don't think you're any different from anybody else. The trick when it comes to commercial agents, I think, there's sort of several parts to it. The first one is to systemize it, make sure that you do it as a system. It can really easily kind of get a bit out of hand, especially if your area is something like anywhere within an hour of where you live. There's likely to be several dozen commercial agents that you're likely to have to get a relationship with. And whilst they can all look nice on a nice sheet of paper at the start, by the time you've had various conversations and they've sent you stuff back and there's been emails and phone calls and everything else, it all gets really messy. So make sure you've got a system, keep it like a CRM system, a customer relationship management system, so you know where you are with each of them, and you can quite easily zoom into what the latest thing was on any particular one. But the trick really is to make sure, first of all, that as soon as you've made the appointment, they're going to check out your website. If you've given them a name of your business, then they're going to have a look on your website. So make sure you've got one and make sure it looks good. The other thing, make sure that you nail exactly what it is that you're looking for. You want to niche down a little. You don't want to be saying, I'll look at anything that makes a profit. You want to be looking in this area at this price for this type of opportunity. And so they know really clearly what it is you're after. And then the final piece of the jigsaw really is the elevator pitch. So practice, 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 practice in the car, practice in the shower, practice with friends, practice with family, practice in the shower again. You can't get good enough. You can't overdo that. And it's not about having a script. Definitely isn't about having a script. It's really about knowing your business and your subject matter inside out, so you can approach it from any angle. Whatever question you get asked, you know the answer, and you can talk about it with enthusiasm, with knowledge, and with passion. And if you practice that, then you can get really, really good at it. But it does take practice. Another thing, top tip, you probably heard before, is if you're feeling a bit nervous, go and practice out of area. Go and pick on some poor, unsuspecting commercial agent who's sitting in a different county and try it all out on them and see what happens. You can always refine your spiel. But there you go. Hopefully, Peter, that helps and has stopped you now feeling nervous.
You want to be nervous? Stephen said, thank you for his answer about QSs and cost consultants. I thought as much. Himmet's question we answered earlier about business experience. He says, thank you. There you go. That's nice and positive. Sumi's got another question in. He says, so guys, tell me, how much does an office building cost in London and outside London? And how much does a high street retail shop cost in London and outside of London? Sorry, two questions in one. Well, Sumi, I can't answer that, can I? Because how big is it? Whereabouts in London? Is it in a good street or a bad street? Is it 3 stories, 2 stories, 10 stories? Is it in good condition? Is it in bad condition? You're starting to wonder now why you've asked that question, aren't you? Because you got to think about how long is a piece of string. I can't answer that. If your question is, what's the cheapest I can buy an office for to get into the market, based on some of the discussions we've been having earlier, and what's the cheapest I can get into a retail scheme to get into the market? Well, if we go back to the family that was all linking up and doing stuff, which was Raj's thing, wasn't it? Grown-up siblings and what they could do, £200,000 to £300,000. You can get into an office scheme for that. You can buy a building for that. It's certainly in certain parts of London. No, you won't. You might just better buy a shed for that in certain parts of London. But in other parts, in some of the outskirts, you will be able to buy an office building. Okay, maybe search a bit high and low. As you come out of London, definitely you can go and buy a small office building for that sort of money. It's going to be pretty shoddy condition. It's probably not going to be in the best area. You can certainly go and buy a retail space for that that's got some uppers that you can convert into residential. And you can probably search for some retail space in London like that. But they're all going to be relatively small units for those sort of number. Maybe you're going to get 2 or 3, maybe 4 flats, maybe 5 into a scheme like that if you're lucky. So it really just does depend to me where it is and what's going on. So you've got a good chance of doing it, but I can't tell you exactly how much they cost, because it could be 100 million and it could be 1 million. It could be anything in between. So hopefully, there you go, lots of things there. I've got a question in for Tom. Let me go straight into this one as well, because Tom says, I saw it earlier. Let me scoot down. Tom says, evening. This is my first time watching the show. I notice in here, Tom, you don't say it's good. So he just says it's his first time. Tom says this is the first time watching the show. He says, I'm also new to property. I haven't done anything. Where should I start? Well, it's not a bad start this evening, is it? I don't want to do buy-to-lets or HMOs. Good guy. I'm thinking about doing developments and selling them. I have a successful existing business in another industry, but it won't get me where I want to in life. So I guess your question, Tom, is where should you start? What should you do? Well, look, if you want to do development, start in development. You might hear, I mean, coincidentally, Tom, that's why I just thought I'd pick it up. It leads me to just a little thing. I'm actually talking tomorrow at an event. I'm going to be talking about a bit of myth busting. I'm speaking at an event called Partners in Property tomorrow, and I'm going to talk about busting the myth of where you have to start in property. You don't have to start on sourcing and then buy-to-lets and then maybe HMOs. And if you're really good and well-behaved, then we'll let you do development. No, if you want to do development, start with development straight away. Just go and do development. Don't listen to people that say you have to go on that long journey. So Tom, if you want to do development, that's what you're going to do. Where do you start? Well, it's not a bad place to start here. We try and do this with a bit of fun, bit of humor, try and entertain you a bit, but we just give you no BS, no fluff. It's just straightforward answers about what you could be thinking of doing. go and have a look at some of the open door shows. Have a listen to some of them. There's a whole series of podcasts that we've got on our website and out there on Spotify. The open door shows are on our website and on YouTube. Go and consume some of that, Tom, and that would give you a real good feel about development. What I would say, though, because you're thinking you don't want to do buy-to-lets, go and talk to people that have done buy-to-lets, good and bad, people that love it, people that hate it. Find out people that are doing HMOs and they love it and hate it. And go and find people that are doing SA and love it and hate it, and rent to rent. Just go out there and talk to people, and people that are loving it and hating it. Don't just go to those people that love those sectors. You go to those people that, yeah, I did that. Whoa, that was a horrible point in my life. And then the same for development. Okay, reach out, ask some people, get into some property networking groups and ask people, and then build up that opinion. Decide what it is you want to do. And then when you decide what you want to do, then maybe reach out and have a chat with people. More than happy to have a chat with you, Tom, and indeed anyone else out there. If anyone wants to, if in a similar position to Tom, and you want to reach out, we're happy to talk to people. Just reach out, either one of us or one of our team. I'm more than happy to spend a bit of time talking to you about development and trying to get you to understand whether it's a good thing for you to be doing or not. And we'll tell you honestly if it's not. So, Tom, hopefully that's answered that question, and hopefully that's give you a bit of a steer.
I've got a riddle for you. Well, in fact, I haven't. Helen has. Are you ready for it?
Okay.
How many contractors does it take to get a good price for a project? I don't
know. How many contractors does it take to get a good price for a project?
I don't think that's exactly what she had in mind. Do you have an answer?
If there's a question, so Helen's asking the question, how many contractors should we have? I can see the question here, to get a good price for the project.
Yeah.
Okay, Helen. You need at the back end, Helen, when you actually go to get the tender returns, you need a minimum of 3. Without 3, you can't compare. You've only got 2, one's high, one's low. You've no idea. 3 is a minimum, and that's a pretty good number in this industry. 3 proper tenders returned, robust tenders, albeit based around a robust tender submission that you're going to put out there. And then you can compare apples with apples, hopefully. You can see where the differences are. And if there's, if there's an outsider, you can start to have a look at it. So minimum of 3. But Helen, to get to 3, you've probably got to start with 6. So you need probably a good half dozen contractors within your network that you need to get involved with. Okay, so you need about 6 contractors that are interested to deal with you, work with you, and then on that basis, you can go out and inquire whether they're interested to submit a tender on the project. Some of them will be busy. Some of them will have plenty of work and they don't. Hopefully you'll get to the point where you might better go out to 4. Often 1 drops out and you'll end up with 3 bona fide good tender returns. So there we are, Helen, 6 down to 3 as a minimum.
One other tip on that actually is, Helen, is don't go out to 20, because if you go out to 20, especially if they find out, they'll ask how many people are they tending are in the tender. Then if they feel that there's really only a very slim chance of them winning the tender because there's so many in it, you're going to so many people, then frankly, it costs them money to put a response to a tender. It's quite a bit of work that they have to do to come up with pricing for you. So they might not bother. So don't make it look like it's just kind of you've gone out to everybody. They give them some comfort that it's a relatively short list. So it's competitive, but they're in with a fighting chance. And that should hopefully get you some good prices.
Right, you fired one at me. I've got one for you now. Paul's asked a question here. So let's get this in. Paul says, how do you best find private investors without falling foul of FCA marketing rules, as I would like to just do this? Any tips? Any tips, Ian? Can we give Paul 2 or 3 top tips for finding private investors?
Well, one of the key things, so the marketing rules are absolutely essential. So you need to be aware of them. The difference between sophisticated and non-sophisticated investors. What I would say when it comes to investment generally with private investors is that for your first deal, just keep it simple. Just you go down the non-sophisticated route, which is basically where you don't have to qualify people, and you are effectively just giving they're lending you money. They're not having a joint venture. They're not having any stake in the end result. They're not taking an equity share. It's just a simple loan to your business, and then you repay it at the end of the term. In terms of how you go about getting it, one of the things that we advocate is it's kind of a tricky one with private investors, because they don't, unlike the architect and the estate agent and pretty much everybody else, they don't wear a name badge. They don't have a sign that says, you know, or a business card that says I'm a private investor. The good news is that there's lots of them around, and you don't know who they are. It could be somebody really close to home. And so one of the things that we advocate is kind of a couple of things. One is tell everybody what you do. One of the advantages that you have when you're talking to a potential private investor is if they haven't told you that they're a private investor, then they don't think that you're selling to them. So you're making a bit of an assumption there that they might be. And you're probably talking in the third person about, you know, sort of, you know, we work with private investors and they get this and this happens and this is the sort of thing we do. But what you're trying to do is not ask for money. If you ask for money, typically you're putting yourself on the back foot. You're going out there. The potential investor then knows that they hold most of the cards, and they also know that presumably you're asking for money because presumably they're not the first person you've asked, and other people must have said no because you're still needing money. So it kind of puts you a bit on the back foot. Far better to be able to describe the situation where you've got some, you know, very interesting opportunities. You work with a small panel of private investors who you know, frankly get a very attractive rate of return, because that is the nature of property development. Typically, if we look at what other where money can actually get a good rate of return these days, there is not a lot without a great deal of risk, and so property development is able to pay a pretty healthy return, but it's also there is an asset involved which can't generally lose all of its value. Property is a relatively robust asset, even if there's no charge on it directly from for the lender. So you're able, I think, to create a dynamic where they are interested in investing with you rather than you going out there and asking for the money. So I think that would be my top tip. Keep it simple, be absolutely aware of the rules. Do not go out there and advertise to investors and promote and market to investors in a way that is going to contravene the rules. Look on the FCA website. There is a whole lot of information on what you can and can't do. But I think keeping it simple, work where the small panel of investors, where you're just getting a fixed loan, the period and the duration of the project, and then position yourself as they should be coming to you effectively and wanting to invest in your deals. I think the final point, one thing that the developers so often get wrong is they think that the money is the most important thing in development, and actually it's not. The deal is the most important thing in development. It just feels like the money is most important when you've got the deal, because that's the thing that you need. But the reality is that there's lots of people wanting to invest, and there are relatively few opportunities to get the sort of return that you can get from property development. The big hurdle at the front end is credibility. How do people know that that you're a good bet, that the deal's a good bet, that they're going to get their money back? So there is definitely a hurdle there, but there is certainly lots and lots of people looking to invest money at the moment.
There we go, Paul. You are honoured to have the last question answered today, because we have run out of time. We've gone over time. I do apologise, but my business partner does tend to ramble on if you give him a question that he wants to get his teeth into. But, you know, it's good content, so we can't complain, can we, Ian?
Harsh. No, we can't complain.
There's a phrase there, isn't there? Harsh, but I can't remember what the next bit is. Anyway, guys, look, that's the end of the show. Thank you for joining us this evening. Please, as always, pop in the chat box if you've enjoyed the show. If you haven't, put it in there as well, and we'll go and have a glass of wine ourselves this evening. But if you have, put it in the chat in the box, as we'd just like to know that, because we do this for you guys. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Next week's show, 3rd of December, same time, 7 o'clock. And we have a guest on next week, popular demand. We have brought back a guy called Mike Sandu, who is one of the owners and co-founders of a company called SC Architecture. So we've got an architect coming in. One of the key people that you need in your property development business. So Come on next week. When we had Mike on last time, we had a really big turnout for Mike and we had a lot of questions coming in. So come and join us next week. Ask Mike some questions all about what it is you want to do for development. So hopefully that'll be good. So there we go. So that looks like the end of the show. People are putting some comments in. Paul says, great answer. Thanks. Sumi says, it goes up as I'm reading this. Cheers, guys. Excellent. As usual. See you next week. Tom says, my first show, but I will be back again. Raj says, great show, gentlemen. Deb says, thanks for another quality show. So many great questions. Most enjoyable whilst eating lasagna, garlic bread, and drinking a glass of wine. Letitia says, great session. Cheers. See you tomorrow at Pips. Letitia, I will. And Christopher says, very informative and educational, genuine and honest responses to questions. Thank you for hosting the session. Christopher, thank you for joining us. I think you joined us late. The replay will be on YouTube if you want to listen to that. If not, have a good evening. See you all next week. Goodbye now.
Take care. Bye.